Nostalgia still ruled the day. The nostalgia cycle is a familiar part of comic book industry. Today's readers get stories controlled by people who want to recreate the comic they read as a child. This isn't something new. The Silver Age kicked off with a recreation of a new Flash, soon followed by new versions of many of the Golden Age greats that came before. Marvel gets a lot of credit for being something new, yet even their stories tapped into nostalgia for Golden Age heroes, especially with the returning characters like Captain America and Namor. While it's foreign nostalgia to a modern reader, it was still a huge part of the Silver Age industry. The perfect example of this is Roy Thomas, a comic fan who got a job at Marvel, or Jim Shooter, who started writing comics at 13. I don't get that last sentence.
Wait, so
while it's foreign nostalgia to a modern reader, it's still a huge part of Silver Age industry. The perfect example is Roy. Okay, first of all, Roy Thomas did love comics, and he read the Golden Age, and he wanted to incorporate. You see, I guess the modern day version of it would be what's his name? Did the Flash, Doomsday Clock, starts with a G, I think. Gosh darn it, I hate when my brain does this. Who was that guy? Did the Flash Reborn? Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns. He's big on the same thing. I don't see a problem. I honestly don't see a problem with the nostalgia, especially when you're trying to reignite comics using old characters.
So when you, that's the thing with nostalgia. I mean, nostalgia can be used properly, and then it can actually help with sales. But if you relying only on nostalgia and you have no story, it's not going to sell regardless of what you do.
Right.
But I mean, the fact that this guy's saying, oh, they relied on nostalgia and for stories, is like, wait, so I mean they actually brought back characters that, you know, their parents might have liked, or their brother, sister?
Except it's not relying on nostalgia.
No, they're adding
Hal Jordan is not Alan Scott.
No.
Barry Allen is not Jay Garrick. They brought the name. Flash is there, but it's a whole new Flash. Green Lantern isn't even the same freaking concept.
No. The only nostalgia I could see on there would be Hawkman, because Hawkman is a Golden Age character, but and like I said, like, you know how many years apart these guys are? Alan Scott and Hal Jordan. Like you're saying, like the nostalgia element.
They were about like 17. They were about 15 to 17 years from the last JSA. Yeah. Actually, I think maybe even less than that. I would have to look, but I remember doing the math on the what ages should be.
So they're saying
no, there was about 8 years, or around there.
So this person, you should never talk about the actual. Hey, let's go back to when comic books were great and bring in stuff from that era that people liked, and maybe we'll get more sales. And then they're like, dang it, we're getting more sales now people want that. Well, too bad, you're not going to get that. We're going to give you the propaganda crap.
Well, you could say maybe bringing in the JSA into the Justice League, having Jay Garrick meet the Flash was built on nostalgia. Okay, I'll give that to you. I think it's flimsy, but I'll give that to you. But it's just it's reestablishing characters, bringing Captain America, and Namor into the modern Marvel. That's just using characters that you have in your farm there.
Man, I got something to say about this.
Okay, let me try to tie up this freaking thought that's leaving my head before
go for it.
Words out. But one thing I will say, and I'll hand it over to Ash for a little bit. Roy Thomas knew how to use the past in order to tell good stories, but he didn't only write that. Roy Thomas is gosh darn everywhere. If Eric were here, he could go off on this seriously. But why is Jim Shooter, this is what Jim Shooter did. Jim Shooter was reading comics. At one point in time, he got bedridden. He was sick. So he was reading a whole bunch of comics. And he noticed Marvel was good. DC's not as good at that point. He was reading Legion of Superheroes. He thought the books were very childish and that he could do better. So he sent some stories in. How is that nostalgia? How is that nostalgia bait? He sent stories in on the Legion of Superheroes, which for all of you who do not know, is the first Silver Age superhero team. anyway, go on ahead, Ash. You got this. I'm gonna open the door for the bird. I'll be right back.
Okay. So look, I just want to call shenanigans on the nostalgia thing. Actually, I think it's really short-sighted, and I think it's something that's basically a young guy or whoever's wrote this looking back at a history that they don't fully understand. I mean, I don't fully understand it, but I've been around comics since the mid 80s, so I feel like I have at least some realm to talk. Nostalgia is a thing that's being done now, right? Nostalgia is something that Marvel and DC seem to be unable to escape because they don't actually have creators. This is why we see things like the Hellfire Gala. Oh, where'd you get that? Oh, we just mined the 80s when X-Men did their big Inferno event. Oh, Inferno. I remember Inferno. That was when I was reading X-Men. Oh, look, we got starting a new Avengers series. What do you call it? Avengers Forever. Oh, you're just ripping off the old Kurt Busiek? And, like, everything Marvel does now. Look, Spider-Verse. How much... Remember Spider-Verse when that was a thing? Like, it's all they do is nostalgia. What
Civil War 2, Planet Hulk 2.
They just wrapped up a Crisis on Infinite Earths. Remember that was a thing in the 80s? Like, I don't want to say that's all they're doing, but they're relying on it way more today than they do. Nostalgia is bad when you're using it as like the reason for your book, for your story, where like, look, come to see all the Easter eggs we put in there. That's bad. I don't think you can point to people like Roy Thomas or Jim Shooter and go, oh, look, all they're doing is just like saying, remember? Because comics were actually different back then. Comics weren't a bunch of old geezers who were like, I've been collecting for 40 years. Comics were on the newsstands, and they were a bunch of kids, for the most part, that were like, oh, check out this cover. Like, you look at this Justice League here, like, oh, these Green Lantern. Like, they didn't know anything about old Golden Age Green Lantern. That was before their time. It wasn't like their dad had comic book boxes saved up, but it's a possibility that would have not been the norm because comic collecting wasn't a thing yet. And so they were having to appeal to new audiences with fresh content. And maybe sometimes they would bring back old heroes, but that's normal in comics. Like, it wasn't like, oh yeah, I remember 10 years ago when Batman and Superman had an adventure together. Let's do it again. Like, that's not a thing. They were just doing it because they knew kids would get excited and it would sell books, and so they did it. They weren't trying to be nostalgic. And then the second thing, we'll wrap it up real quick, is this idea that getting people like Roy Thomas and Jim Shooter to write comics because they loved the industry, and by being fans, therefore, were students of the industry, and somehow that's a bad thing, and we shouldn't have that, is so retarded. That's like basically saying Quentin Tarantino should have never made movies, because that's essentially what Quentin Tarantino was, a super movie nerd.
Yeah, by the way,
got up to be able to make an independent movie one time, and then he broke out his career, and now everyone loves Quentin Tarantino. Like, this is a good thing. Jim Shooter and Roy Thomas are legends, and they've contributed so much to the industry because it's something that they actually cared about. Anyways, I'm done.
Yeah.
By the way, the more you know Quentin Tarantino, or the more you know movies, the more you know Quentin Tarantino just steals stuff. But okay.
Well, it'd be like Dan Slott saying, I created the Spider-Verse. No, you didn't. The Fox Kids 90s cartoons for Spider-Man had the Spider-Verse in there with the Doc Ock arms on Spider-Man, one of the variations, which he decided to bring into this week's issue or last week's issue of Spider-Man. Now he's got Doc Ock tentacles. Why? My other concern is the whole entire time you guys are talking, all I see is Batman and Superman holding hands.
Okay. Let's see. One Slick is saying this article is known as revisionist history. Nostalgia is good, says Rhaegar. I'm sick of nostalgia being vilified, says Druin. Let's see. Nostalgia, when done right, respects what came before, says Tehillim. Let's see. Do they recycled the original Human Torch into the Vision, says Maranya. And let's see. Let me tie this thought. Okay, I get it. Okay. Let's see. Roy Thomas literally brought Conan to Marvel. You have to be smoking something to trash Thomas, says Almighty Jack. I agree. Roy Thomas. Me and Eric were talking about doing a best writers of comics, and we were we brought up Roy Thomas quite a bit. Let's see, if only kids are reading it, how is their nostalgia? Let's see, let's see, I wouldn't say DC is relying. Okay, they're talking about something like video game. In Silver Age, they crossed over to introduce the characters to wider audiences. That isn't the case now. It's a Psycho Society. And Glinzer is saying today's writers sound like Vanilla Ice explaining how Ice Ice Baby wasn't a ripoff of Under Pressure. Nah, because you see, if you listen to Queen, they go dun 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 dun, and I go dun 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 dun. See, I go up, they go down, so it's a completely different song. I kid you not. That's what he said.
Actually, no, it is completely different because you only had one white guy singing it, and then you had two gay guys singing the other one.
Okay, there you go. There you go, guys. What'd you think of this particular conversation and the subject? How do you feel about the writing of the Silver Age? Is it better? Is it worse than modern day? I think there's kind of a mix of the two. Yeah, I like the fact that we're tackling themes that were not allowed to be done back in the Silver Age. I think there's a sense of fun in the Silver Age that modern day comics have lost. Definitely you could see a decline throughout the years, as a matter of fact, to the point where now the message is a hell of a lot more important than the story itself. But that's just my opinion. What is yours? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to click like, share, subscribe, ring the notification bell if you haven't done it already, and share the video. Share, 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 share. And if you don't mind helping out the channel another way, go on over to Ko-Fi. I've actually opened up commissions again as well. And drop $1 in the till or get a commission. And I'd like to thank everybody who's already done that. And to everyone, all of the true believers, thank you very, very much for watching.